everyone, and welcome to another episode of UnMasked, the podcast where we go into the stories of people that battle depression and what they do to overcome. Today we have a special guest, someone I've known for a while, fitness trainer, dancer, influencer extraordinaire, Alexa Giacinto. Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
How have you been?
I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah,
This is good.
it has been a minute since I've seen you.
I know. I'm trying to think of, well, definitely pre-COVID, obviously, but
Let's get into the who you are. I mean, what is the 30-second elevator pitch of who is Alexa?
all right. I am a personal trainer slash dancer slash online coach, and basically what I do at the moment is I have clients in person and online, and basically my goal is to focus on overall fitness and just how that leads into your wellness. So wellness to me is not just, I'm not just going to hand you a workout. I want to focus on your mental state. I want to focus on your nutrition. I want to focus on all the pieces of the puzzle that we can come up with and work on personally and on our own without having to involve outside forces at all. How internal can we get us to feeling our best before, we go out into the world the next day. So
Where did your battle with mental health and depression start? What's your earliest memory?
probably sophomore year of college. I was saying, yeah, sophomore year of college. I don't remember an exact moment that triggered anything. I just remember going to sleep way earlier than anybody else, like 6 p.m. after I was a dance major. Let's start there. So dance major in school, freshman year, having a great time. I had a great childhood, all the amazing memories. My parents are amazing. Things were going awesome. Things were great, having a great time. Sophomore year hits, something switches where I'm just not necessarily feeling my best on a day-to-day basis. And things did change. Obviously, and when you go away anywhere and change your scenery and change the people you're around on a day-to-day basis, things are going to change a little bit. So I was at that point, I moved from my small town in Illinois to Chicago, middle of the city. I love the city, so I was psyched. I was excited to be around all kinds of new people.
Yeah.
But, something did switch where I didn't feel my best on a regular basis. I probably started gaining weight for the first time in my life. I was that skinny dancer girl, and I knew nothing else, and I ate whatever I wanted. So I did whatever I wanted. I danced all the time, too, so I was like, I had that kid metabolism that just, stuck with me for a long time.
Yeah.
But my body started changing, too. My sleep schedule started changing. The people around me started changing. My habits started changing. And I started feeling different, too. So I feel like it really started kicking in probably sophomore year. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know who to talk to. It was I feel like it was legit a year before we even regularly started talking about mental health in society, on the internet, all these things. I feel like it was right before that happened because I didn't have a clue of what was going on. And I grew up in the church, too. So my family, it was, let's pray about it. And I appreciated that. So I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what I was feeling and didn't know who to talk to. So it was a odd kickoff to sophomore year. And it probably was in and out and lasted a good 5 years. So that was when I felt it really kick in.
What kind of you say you were going to bed early, like you had all these thoughts that were going through your head. Like, what were these things in your head? Like, what were you thinking about?
I really just didn't feel as connected to my day-to-day as I once did. And I don't know, dance also changed for me. Growing up, dance was my escape. I was not book smart. I was not that kid getting A's. Like, if I got an A, we were excited. It made no sense.
It was a pizza party, right?
It was a pizza party. And I was that left-brained kid. I was not good at test taking, even to this day. So my escape was dance. It was my go-to. It was my everything. And I think when that switched to becoming academic and being the thing that I was dance major, I think when that switch happened, it kind of took me out of dance a little bit. And I think that may have triggered something. But
So, I mean, at what point? I mean, you said it was about 12 months before, all this stuff on social media came out. Like, you realized you might be depressed. Like, what was that triggering moment for you where you're like, wow, fuck, I might be depressed?
I think it was when, well, yeah, like I said, I was going to bed a little bit earlier and just started thinking and feeling a little bit differently across the board and didn't know why. And I was going to church. I was doing all the spiritual things I thought I needed to do on that end too.
Yeah.
But I was probably the most disconnected from God at that point than even now, So there was a lot that needed to be fixed on that end. But yeah, there was something about that time. I was just crying myself to sleep, even like crying all the time. I'm not like an overly emotional kid. So there must have been something I had to process at that time that I didn't realize I needed to. And then I was just emotional as can be out of nowhere. And I couldn't figure out why. So that definitely led me to talk to my parents to be like, and I love them. They definitely were the first person I wanted to bring up anything to.
Yeah.
Being very helpful. We prayed about it. We talked about it. But even still, there weren't just so casual resources, and not that like, if you're following the wrong pages and the wrong people, you could be getting a totally different feed than I have. Obviously, I've
Yeah.
curated a decade worth of mental health on my feed now, so I've definitely set the tone for myself.
Yeah.
But there is a lot more easy to access resources if you have the internet available to you, and it's definitely a topic we're talking about now. So I think it was at the early stages of that where I suddenly felt a little more help, and I started to learn the changes I needed to make, but I was also in a place of, this is where I'm comfortable and I hate it here, but I'm not done yet. There was something there. So it took a long time to get out of that, but that's, yeah, what triggered me in that sense to eventually talk to somebody and be like, hey, what's going on?
You bring up an interesting point there because you come from a very religious family, especially with your parents. When I've had spoken to people previously that come from religious families, they either go kind of one way or the other. When you talk about depression, it's like either God can fix it or we'll support you if you go get help. Like, how did your parents react with that?
It was a little bit of both, and I genuinely, even at that time, and even seeing it now, don't think it was as severe as it could have been for so many people.
Yeah.
So for me, I never wanted to take the medication route or the I need to go somewhere to get help route. But if that was a choice someone needed to make, and I felt a little more in control, but I'm that type of person that would rather be in control than seek out help first.
Yeah.
So I'm very thankful my parents listened to me and talked me through those moments. But it definitely was a little bit of both. We prayed in those moments, and at the time, I didn't feel connected in that moment to God to like really accept what that would have helped me in. So I didn't feel like I got something from that in that moment. But I am the type of person to, like, he is in my life now the source of everything. So it was definitely a coming back kind of moment, and it took a long time. But I think it depends on the severity of it. Like, there are chemical imbalances at the end of the day too for everybody. So
Yeah.
it depends on your extreme, but I think it was accurate for my situation to pray about it, and if I needed to seek out help, they would have been there.
Okay, so from that moment forward, like like when you told them, like how did your depression and anxiety kind of either grow or develop from there? Did it get worse? Did it get better? It was kind of up and down.
Yeah, it definitely is a roller coaster kind of thing. Maybe even a little bit of a seasonal. I feel like everyone has a little seasonal
Yeah,
something, a wave of
especially in
sadness.
Chicago, man. Like
Yeah,
you guys are stuck inside half the year.
and you don't drive there. You take the CTA. You're standing in a blizzard like, on your way to school and then dancing and trying to be happy. Like, it doesn't work. I craved the West Coast, which is why I'm in Los Angeles now. But I've also, figured out my toolbox of things that make me feel better. But at that time, yeah, it was a little bit of a roller coaster over a 5-year span of trying to figure out what the heck is going on. And my body's tied to it too, because this whole time I grew up being a dancer. I was very physical in my day to day and trained every single day. for a good chunk of my younger years. And I loved every second of it. And then next thing you know, I put on an easy 20 pounds of body fat, and then that turns into 35, 40 pounds of body fat over a couple of years. And I feel so disconnected from my body. And like, it'd be different if dance and movement wasn't everything I loved. Like, some of my friends moved on to totally different careers, you know what I mean? But they danced in high school. Like, I loved movement. So yeah, when I felt disconnected from my body, that changed a lot for me. And I think kept me in a bad place for a bit. But I knew the changes that needed to be made, and I did the fad diets, I did the quick fixes, and I was committed. I'm an all or nothing person. So when I decide I'm going to do something, whether it's eat or not eat, or eat so much or eat little or whatever, I'm going to do it. So my metabolism now that I'm however many years out and I'm a trainer and I know these things, I was putting my metabolism and my hormones through literally a roller coaster. Yeah. So my body was in fight or flight mode for 5 years, and add depression and anxiety on top of it. It's holding on to all of these feelings and all of these things as fight or flight, and you hold on to body fat, you hold on to where you are. You can't change these things. So yeah, it took a long time for me to, I guess, calm down my nervous system and start moving again, and just wanting to get better at different types of movement. And learned, like, I stopped dancing for a couple of years too, actually. I graduated from college, dance degree, moved to LA for dance, quote unquote, didn't dance for 2 years. I just worked at E1. I loved everything. I loved LA. I just think I needed some time away from it as school too, because it was so associated to like school that I just did what I needed to do to graduate and get done, and I needed a break, kind of thing. So I also took 2 years off of dance. So it really wasn't until I started working with any trainers that I've started to like movement again, you know? And then suddenly it wasn't like I was working out because I needed to lose weight. It was because I wanted to get better at this movement quality, because I love movement quality. So I would get into a yoga class, I would take boxing and work with the trainer. And suddenly it became less about like, oh, losing weight. It was like, oh, I'm a mover. I know these things. My body can do this all the time if I want it to.
That's what makes you happy.
Yeah, it makes me so happy to move. So then I started fueling my body differently, and that changed. And I started, do you remember Yancey Berry? You know Yancey Berry.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I started going to his book club. That was a game changer. So it was all at the time that I started like suddenly getting into working out and in a new way and on a regular basis, and taking yoga classes, because I'm a dancer, I'm flexible. I was like, this makes sense for me. Let me try this. So I took all the intense power, sweaty classes, and of course you're going to start to lose body fat in those classes too. So I started doing that, and then I started going to Yancey Berry's book club. And it was all like, we read the 4 Agreements, we read East Square, we read, what did we read? Pocket Full of Money, The Magic. We read all of these incredible books on like inner power, your relationship with money. Let's see, just ways to live your life in a more abundant way across the board.
And self-help type books.
Yeah, exactly. All these self-help books, and just understanding gratitude in a new way than I had understood when I was a child. That was a big game changer. And all of these pieces just really working together at the same time is what made any change. And it was a quick change for my body, which was the weirdest thing, because people would be like, oh, you look so amazing. Oh, you're making all, like, you look so, so good. And I'm like, I see it in the mirror too, but it happened pretty fast when I started making these, especially nutritional and working out changes all at the same time on a really committed level. Like, you're going to see change fast. And I think that's what blew my mind the most, because I was like, I see what you're saying, but it's weird hearing it from people. And when you're coming from a place of having had anxiety and depression somewhat associated with it, you kind of don't even want to hear anything. You're like, I'm in my bubble. Please don't even bring up, which is kind of weird, but I'm sure some people understand me when I say, like, hearing any compliments on that kind of like physical way when you're making so many other changes, it's weird. It's weird. There's something about it.
No, I'm with you on that one. It's like when I lost a bunch of weight, people are like, "Wow, you've lost like so much weight." I'm like, "What? You're saying I was fat before? Like I was really
Yeah,
feeling shitty about myself, but now that's
like you
cool."
were like, paying attention. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
Not that you
So,
were, but if you see me every day, I guess you're gonna notice. Yeah.
no, I get that. Okay, so during this period where you were down, like you were struggling on a day-to-day basis, like besides telling your family, did anyone else kind of notice you were going through shit, or did it push anyone away? Like, and how did it affect your relationships with people?
That's a good question. I think especially in college, there were maybe a few teachers that really, really got me, and like I got them, and like I loved them, and then probably the other few may not have liked me. And that's mostly, honestly, because I know me, especially now, and I know me as a kid, like the real me.
Yeah,
That's not who I am. I don't like try to leave a store, whatever, on anybody, but when you're at that kind of place, it's like you're not going to leave the best taste in everybody's mouth.
yeah,
You're just not. They're not going to put you on the best version of yourself every single day.
yeah.
So I feel like there are probably some former friends in college or teachers in college who may not have had the best experience with me. But
I think it can be said for everybody, though. Like,
exactly, like,
yeah,
and not in a bad way, honestly, in like the worst way. Obviously, I've met so many people where I'm like, that's nuts. I was nothing. But no, like they maybe didn't get the best version of myself. So, especially in those moments, yeah, for sure. But as far as people who were curious in seeing that I needed help, probably more so in LA when I started like really getting to know people, and
yeah,
I don't know, yeah, going to Yancey's. Like I was making more active choices because, like I said, I'm someone who processes things internally more than I process through anybody else. So especially when you're at a low place or depressed or anxious, and you're someone who processes internally, I especially was like, whether I want to be here forever or not, I'm cozy here right now, so I'm not going to rock the boat. I'm not going to
yeah.
say anything. So it's when I started making active choices to do better that the right people came forward or were suddenly instrumental in me making any change and holding me accountable. Because you also have to like suddenly want to be around those kinds of people because you choose not to when you want
Yeah,
to,
exactly, exactly.
Exactly. So yeah, when you start putting yourself around those people, those are choices. So suddenly that was everybody around me holding me accountable, actually.
How are you like? How was that? When people were holding you accountable, how was that received by you? Like, was it, were you caught off guard? Was it like you felt like personally attacked, or people were watching you? Like, what were you feeling during those moments?
I mean, maybe a little bit of both. It depends on how close I was to you, kind of thing. Like,
Yeah,
I feel like even me and Hannah held each other somewhat accountable without even realizing it. Like, we
yeah,
definitely agree that we both had a very interesting glow up over like a 4-year span, physically, emotionally, and mentally. Yeah. I think there were, it was definitely more of a choice to put yourself in those kinds of situations and around those people that would hold you accountable. And maybe in moments that I didn't want to be held accountable. And I always made my own choices at the end of the day because I'm that kind of person. So these kind of changes could be made so fast for some people, and I appreciate that. But it took me a few years. And for some, it maybe takes decades, and that's okay
yeah,
too. But I had a major ego and insecurity issue to work through, and that was going to take a lot longer than I might have realized. But it's, we're still working to this day, but I feel definitely more myself than ever, in that sense. So,
So
yeah.
during this growth period that you were talking about, people holding you accountable, like, were you able to identify like the things that trigger your downward spirals? Like trigger your moods and your depression?
Yeah, definitely food. I think, well, there's definitely addiction issues in my family, like historically, whatever. But my past generation is definitely one of those that nipped it in the bud, and I feel that, and I feel it in us. But mine was less linked to alcohol, drugs, whatever. It was more linked to how I approached food and eating. So that was a huge trigger for me. And that took me a little bit to figure out how to come at, because it's not something you can cut cold turkey and take a break from for a few weeks and then come at it with a new approach of understanding and enlightenment. No, like, you need to eat to live. So as you're learning about what you need to do to make changes in this area, it's weird because you're still like feeding the beast at the same time. So it took me a long time in that area. So that was my main thing, aside from anything else, honestly, whether it was alcohol. I think food was the biggest thing for me as like a woman too, you know? There's always that societal standard that you're going to feel no matter what, especially when you grow up that cute skinny girl, whatever, and then that changes and you don't feel like anything associated to anybody that, you know, so it's weird. It's a weird take on it too as a woman, but
especially being you know, I mean, you live in and work in West Hollywood, you know, it's like, you know, it's
you still feel it. You do.
yeah, you know, I feel like anytime anyone has a burger, it's like, wow, you're eating a burger, like, come on. Yeah, like there's definitely that stigma. It's not just with women, it's with guys too. Well, that's why I live in Orange County now, you know, like I can go through drive through and not be judged. Outside of you know, like your friends holding you accountable, like did you ever reach out to, like, you know, like try therapy or anything like that, or anything alternate to manage this?
So here's the thing. No, but I'm very pro therapy, and I was thinking about it even just this morning. I'm like, this is a priority of mine in 2022, because regardless of how internally I process and regardless of how connected I feel to God, I think having someone unbiased outside that I feel like I can connect to in a real way that will come up with the right questions for me to ask myself will be a good call. So, eventually.
I mean, like I was in the same boat as you. Like I had people saying, like, you know, go to therapy, go to therapy. And I had tried it before, and I was like, I don't want to relive my childhood. Like, you know, I had an up and down childhood. Like I'm no different than anybody else. Like, you know, I just want to, like, I want to know facts and figures. I want to know, like, okay, well, how to identify when I'm
takes over.
yeah, like, you know, like tell me when I'm in a funk and tell me how to get out of my funk.
Yep.
Like, I don't want to go in past regression and all this fucking shit that they talk about. But like, no, I completely understand.
Yeah.
But
It's a lot. And I can only imagine for some people on like some extremes where they had like really incredibly terrible childhoods. Like,
yeah,
of course you don't want to go back to that.
yeah,
So to be open to that kind of therapy and unlearning and backtracking is exhausting, and it's probably going to take a long time, but maybe when you're well into your later years and you're very grateful that you did it because you understand what you where you truly are and who you are
yeah.
and all that. So
It's like you're deconstructing yourself, you know, just analyzing yourself piece by piece. And like, you know, I get the
figuring out everything for the first time. You don't know what's
exactly.
happening.
Exactly. You're like, oh, I'm this way today because I did this when I was a kid. It's like, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, it really
You
does.
know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, with, I mean, obviously being in fitness now, like you still do dance, like how does your mental health, you know, and your depression, like affect your career? Like, you know, does it?
I think it's definitely more nailed down. I have my things that I go to on a regular basis that keep me where and who I want to be. So I am definitely I listen to a lot of podcasts, so I'm very excited to listen to this podcast regularly. I have my podcast, I got my playlist, I'm a dancer, my family's all musicians, like music brings us back to whatever we want to feel, so that's a big one for me. So I have my like my fitness, my dance, like all these regular things that I know bring me back to me on a regular basis that I may have not necessarily categorized in that way when I was younger. So that's what helps so much. But I mean, it keeps me really, really busy. So there's definitely burnout moments that I need to catch, and I'm still learning to catch on a regular basis, where
Yeah.
I can find that nice ebb and flow of what's the right amount of work for me now, because I love working and I want to continue working, but what is more long-term of an approach, and how hard can I go for how long before my body's going to be like, all right, rest, you know?
Yeah.
So there are definitely those moments. But when it comes to depression and anxiety, I definitely feel more at a level place, and I'm very grateful. And there's no stigma around anybody who takes any medication, but I'm not on any medication. So I feel like for me, as of now, I don't know, things could change, and I'm open to change, and I'm open to whatever happens in the future. But as far as figuring out what I need on a regular basis and what makes me feel most myself, I really feel like I've nailed that down. So that feels really good.
So, I mean, I know we talked about you like moving, like makes you happy. You know, it's like, you know, sort of your cure for your spirals. Uh, when COVID hit, obviously you couldn't do anything. Like, how did that affect things?
Well, early on, I was definitely that Zoom yoga girl, that Zoom hit class. Like, I was like, all right, we're doing it. And
Yeah.
I think movement, especially for those who don't move regularly, it's a hack, y'all. You gotta do it. You gotta do it. Start simple, like just pick something, because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, we're all human. We're gonna feel better from doing this on a regular basis. It's just how it is. So maybe try it. But as a regular mover, I was like, shoot. But COVID, oh man. It was weird because I also, like, you went to Equinox, you get it. We love the social side of it too. It was like a whole
Yeah.
crack in the system that we felt, and we were like, oh,
It was a social club, man.
it
Like, I
was
just went there to see the people. It's like, oh, I might get a workout while I'm here.
I
You
know
know?
exactly. It was a little bit of both. So we
Yeah.
definitely felt a hit in every area. But I would hit the driveway. I would turn on my Zoom class and I'd be like, all right, let's get it. And then, at that time too, I was starting to really get into more heavy lifting. So once COVID hit, I didn't have like anything more than 30-pound dumbbells in my apartment.
Yeah.
So just like a few random pieces, maybe a TRX for my outside clients. But that was pretty much it. And I just kind of stuck to the simple stuff. I did some more yoga. I would hit a handstand every I got really into handstands against my door in COVID, which is really random. But I would get really good at balancing. I was like, this is going to be my thing. I'm going to like see how long I can really hold it without falling over. And that was fun. That was fun for a little bit. So I got upside down a lot. The body was moving. I stayed pretty moving, which is nice. I danced a little bit, took some heels online classes, a little Instagram live here and there.
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah.
But
Okay.
as soon as I saw one of the studios was open, I was like, I'm going. I started teaching, so
Oh, that's cool.
I stayed moving. I taught a heels class every week for like a year straight. And I was like choreographically in a brand new place too. So I was ready to plow through classes and just like choreograph. And I had so much time because I wasn't working. So creatively, it was like the perfect time to just like really get into dance. So
Yeah.
that was nice. So I definitely stayed moving pretty much all through COVID. Yeah.
Well, it's actually that's a pretty good story. Like a lot of the people that I've spoken to about, when I ask them, what did you guys do during COVID? It's like, oh, I was working out like the first couple of weeks, and then, I was like, well, what's the point? Like now we're stuck. We're in week 5, month 5, a year's gone past, like, and
That's
they lose that motivation, like you were doing handstands.
I was doing handstands and I was dancing. But also my roommate's a dancer. Like the energy in the space across the board, like of
Yeah.
any of my other LA living situations or former, like I had been moving every probably 9 months since I was 18,
Yeah.
college, whatever. So any of my previous living situation, like this was the living situation and the roommate I was meant to have during COVID because we just had fun. We had fun.
Yeah.
And we stayed out of it. We went to the grocery store when we had to, and we stayed out of it until we got out of it. Yeah.
That makes perfect sense.
We definitely just stayed moving. It would be different if it wasn't like the culture of my living situation, but it was. So that helped.
Well, I mean, okay, so let's just like analyze when you first thought you had depression to like now, like what is like your worst moment you can think of, or like, your darkest moment?
Yeah, okay, so yeah, my sophomore year, I didn't necessarily think this was linked to anything, and my brother will hear this, but my brother had a serious car accident my sophomore year, like serious. He like flipped his car. could have easily not made it out, but somehow he did. And it was one of those situations too where like it happened. I was on the phone in Chicago, like listening to my dad be like, we're at the hospital, we don't know what's happening, so I'll call you back when I can, like, kind of thing. And he came out of it with nothing. Like, he was totally fine. Like when he was on the phone, like, he sounded crazy, like everything, like it was crazy. Like he was saying some crazy shit on the phone. Like when he called my dad after they got someone to call the ambulance kind of thing. But once he came to and it was over and he's in the hospital and they're doing their checkups, whatever, he was totally fine. So at that time, like I said, we weren't talking about fixing the mental side and talking about all these things, talking about your trauma as casually as we are now, because once it was over and he came out of it, we were like, okay, he's fine. Next, everyone's fine. And I think that's when even a few things triggered in me to be like, what's going on? We're clearly not processing something. And me and my brother have talked about it. We've all talked about it in our family since, as we've gotten new information and talked about more mental health related things in general, about, you know, that was a really intense moment. And for him to have to go through in the middle of winter and like a blizzard, like it was crazy. So yeah, there was a lot that we all felt coming out of certain moments that we've all been through in our family, but we're all very strong. And yeah, we're definitely talkative more about situations since, especially that, which helps a lot because, you know, life happens and it's gonna happen. But no, I think our relationship at that time was just like, we had been through certain moments together. I mean, we were brother and sister, but we weren't like friends necessarily. But that kind of thing, you're like, what the heck? We're only 2 years apart. That freaked me out. I grew up with him. We did everything together. Like, what? So, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that put me in a funk for a while. And I didn't necessarily think of that to have been a reason. I didn't think of anything, like I said. Like, I didn't know what I was feeling. I didn't know what was going on. But that was around the time things started changing, for sure. Yeah.
So, I mean, when you like, you know, take a step back and look at, you know, your battle with depression and anxiety over the years, like what is the one thing that you learned about your depression that kind of surprises you?
It changes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm plugging in my computer. It changes with the seasons, that's for sure. Like, I learn something new about it all the time. And for me, like, it'll come up in the most random of moments. Or, like, I'll think I'm good, and then suddenly my body is going into fight or flight, and I'm, like, feeling all intense about any type of overthinking that is, like, so out of reality. Actually, I heard, like, what was it, on Jay Shetty's podcast recently? He said something like, I'm trying to remember the exact quote, but it was so good. It was like, when you're only in what you feel, you're completely outside of what is real, kind of thing. So I think for me, feelings and emotions are less who you are in 100% kind of sense and more just guides of what you need to be directed into doing. So realizing that helped a lot. But I think my anxiety really kicks in more in my body. I hold it in well, but I'm freaking out. Like, I'm literally that, like, it's fine in the fire thing. Like, literally that. It's insane. Like, my body will go through 100% of all the intense emotions, and I'm just, like, totally looking normal. So I've gotten good at kind of feeling when those moments will kick in and be like, okay, let's go back to our breath work. Because if I can start with my breath and figure that out, I can usually get everything else, like, come back to what's actually happening, come back to reality, come back to, like, yes, might be what I'm feeling right now, but what's actually happening.
So if you're internalizing this stuff all the time, like, you know, does it get to a point where you just, like, let it all out at once? Like, it's just a...
And I don't like to do that, and that's how I am. Like, I'm someone who won't just, like, cry on a normal basis when things are, like, sweet and adorable or, like, semi-emotional. Like, if I'm going to cry, it's suddenly going to kick in, and it's going to be a whole day, and I probably got to take off because it's going to be a whole day. So I'm definitely that kind of person to, like, hold it in, and then it'll suddenly appear. But I think there's something good to being able to process as in the moment as you can. Like, know when there's a time and a place, but don't hold it in and wait till it's gone and quote unquote, and then suddenly emerges out of nowhere a decade later. Like, I don't want to do that anymore. So if I feel something, I want to talk about it when it's happening, but the right time and right place with the right people and in the right kind of moment, but get it processed as soon as I can in a real way, so that what emotions need to come about are authentic and make sense for the moment, so I don't have to process that shit later, like out of nowhere. Easier said than done. Like, I'm only 27, don't get me wrong. Like, there's definitely stuff that I'm probably figuring out now that I'm not going to know what's happening, but you know, as aware as I can be with what information we have now, that's amazing. Like, I'm trying. I think we all are, which is kind of cool.
So you think about the things that you've learned, though, you know, things we've talked about today, like what advice would you give to, you know, someone that's going through something similar to you, you know, same sort of emotions?
Yeah, I would say, especially if you're someone, to not get people involved unless it's severe. Find somebody who you can at least like unload with a little bit. So that like overly chatty neighbor who like spills everything to you, maybe only in the scenario if you trust them as an individual. If they're nuts and you don't trust their advice, don't unload anything to them. But there might be someone in your life who isn't necessarily related to this scenario, or a therapist, or somebody in like your cousin who you kind of trust their advice because you've heard it before, but they're not necessarily tied to it. Like, but they're talkative enough to you where you feel like open enough to talk about it. Try it.
Yeah.
Start there. If you're someone who is on social media regularly, and I am, and I work through social media, so I'm on that shit all the time, switch up your feed, go through your feed and see who you're following and see if it matches with the kind of person you want to be, not necessarily the person you are right now. So if you can switch up your feed and what you're taking in on a regular basis too, especially starting your day, whether it's with a meditation or podcast on inner growth or a type of playlist that's just going to get your energy going in the right direction, like do those things, because that's going to get you going in a day-to-day basis as like the person that you're trying to kind of become, right?
Yeah.
That's still you, but this is the kind of route that's going to work for you. Whether it's movement too, like throw a little movement in your morning practice. So figure out these things in your day-to-day that you can kind of adjust, because at the end of the day, like your life is your day-to-day. Like that makes up your day-to-day. So your day-to-day has to change.
You kind of like just setting the tone for who you are every day, basically.
Yep. So especially if you're someone who scrolls a little bit throughout your day, if you switch up your feed and suddenly it's more motivational or more about, wellness facts or debunking health myths or something like that, this really could change your day-to-day approach. This is changing your mentality. It really, really is, because you have new information suddenly. So change up the information you're taking in on a regular basis and how you're taking it in. Like, I know that I'm not necessarily a reader. So I'm just not going to try to read a ton of books. I'll do audiobooks. I listen to things. I watch things.
Yeah.
So pick your media source, pick your whatever that you take in regularly, and find someone or something that represents a new niche that you need to be informed about in order to make these changes, that you kind of are like, this person's kind of cool. Follow them. I don't know. Switch it up. So that'll really, really help. That's what helped me. So
that's actually good advice. I mean, you and I are very similar in that sense. Like I fucking hate reading. Like I'll read if I have to, but like if I can avoid it, I'll go.
Feel bad about it.
Yeah, I go out of my way to avoid a book. Like give me the audio version, or give me
listen to the audio version. Hands down.
Yeah, I mean I read kids books for fun, like because they're just simple and they make me laugh.
I'm dyslexic. I'm like, it's the same. I'm just reading the same sentence over and over.
Well, I mean, what's next for you now? What's
next for me? So I'm focusing a lot on my in-person clients, which is great, and I'm taking on online clients, which is really cool because I just started online coaching. So that's been really, really fun, and I really like the approach because it's workouts, but It's been a lot more in depth, which I like. It's more of this kind of stuff, like where we're going in on a little bit of everything, because it doesn't just take you showing up to the gym 2 hours a week to see changes. Like, it's a lot going on.
It's the heavy lifting that goes with it
too. Like, we gotta change these things. You know, there's a lot there. So it's a lot of that kind of stuff, which I love.
Well, that's awesome. That's awesome. I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Yes. It's been a minute, but here we are again.
Well, Lex, I mean, thank you so much for coming on today. Really appreciate the chat. It's great to finally catch up with you. It's, like I said, it's been a while.
It really has. And
for all of you out there that listening, when you are going through some shit, find something you love doing, like get out and move, or find an audiobook, find whatever it is whatever takes your mind off it. Like, you just do you.
Do you. Everyone's different, and that's okay too. So find what works for you.
Exactly right. Well, again, Lex, thanks so much for being on today, and take care.
I appreciate it.